Pardners by Rex Ellingwood Beach. Most all the old quotations need fixing, said Joyce in tones forbidding dispute. For instance, the guy that alluded to marriages germinating in heaven certainly got off on the wrong foot. He meant partnerships. The same works ain't got capacity for both, no more and you can build a split-second stopwatch in a stone quarry. No, sir. A true partnership is the sanctifiedest relation that grows, is, and has its beans, while any two folks of opposite sect can marry and peg the game out some way. Of course, all partnerships ain't divine. To every one that's heaven born there's 1,000 made in. There goes them cussed dogs again. He dove abruptly at the tent flap, disappearing like a palmed coin, while our canvas structure reeled drunkenly at his impact. The sounds of strife without rose shrilly into blended agony, and the yelps of Keenor melted away down the gulch in a rapid and rabid diminuendo. Inasmuch as I had just packed out from camp in a loose pair of rubber boots, and was nursing 2 gall blisters, I did not feel called upon to emulate this energy of arbitration, particularly in bare feet. That black malamute is a walking delegate for strife, he remarked, returning. Sometime I'll lose my temper, and that's the kind of partners me and Justus Morrow was. Never more do I interrupt the allegory of my mate, no matter how startling its structure. He adventures orally when and in the manner the spirit calls, without rote, form, or tone production. Therefore I kicked my blistered heels in the air and grunted aimless encouragement. I was prospecting a claim on Caribou Creek, and had her punched as full of holes as a sponge cake, when the necessity of a change appealed to me. I was out of everything more nourishing than hope and 1 slab of pastry-streaked bacon, when 2 tenderfeet mushed up the gulch, and invited themselves into my cabin to watch me pan. It's the simplest thing known to science to salt a tenderfoot, so I didn't have no trouble in selling out for $3,000. You see, they couldn't kick, 'cause some of us old-timers was bound to get their money anyhow, just a question of time, and their inexperience was cheap at the price. Also, they was real nice boys, and I hated to see 'em fall amongst them crooks at Dawson. It was a short-horned triumph, though. Like the Dead Sea biscuits of scripture, it turned to ashes in my mouth. It wasn't 3 days later that they struck it, right in my last shaft, within a foot of where I quit diggin'. They rocked out 50 ounces first day. When the news filtered to me, of course, I never made no holler. I couldn't either, that is, honestly, but I bought a $600 grub steak, loaded it aboard a dory, and having instructed the trader regarding the disposition of my mortal, drunken remains, I fanned through that camp like a prairie fire shot in the sirloin with a hot wind. Of course, it wasn't such a big spree, nothing gaudy or Swede-like, but them that should know, claimed it was a model of refinement. Yes, I have got many encomiums on its general proportions and artistic finish. $100 an hour for 24 hours, all in red liquor, confined to and in me and my choicest sympathizers. I reckon all our booze combined would have made a fair sluice head. Anyhow, I woke up considerable farther down the dim vistas of time and about the same distance down the Yukon, in the bottom of my dory, seeking new fields at 6 miles an hour. The trader had followed my last will and testament scrupulous, even to covering up my legs. That's how I drifted into Rampart City, and Justus Morrow. This here town was the same as any new camp, a mile long and 18 inches wide, consisting of saloons, dance halls, saloons, trading posts, saloons, places to get liquor, and saloons. Might not have been so many dance halls and trading posts as I've mentioned, and a few more saloons. I dropped into a joint called The Reception, and who'd I see playing bank but single out Wilmer, the worst gambler on the river. Mounted police had him on the woodpile in Dawson, then tied a can on him. At the same table was a nice, tender Philadelphia squab, 'bout frying size, and while I was watching, Wilmer pulls down a bet belonging to it. That's an old game. "Pardon me," says the broiler, "you have my checks." "What?" growls Single Out, I knowed this game before you quit nursin', bright eyes. I can protect my own bets. That's right, chimes the dealer, who I seen was Curly Bud, Wilma's partner. Lord, thinks I, there's a pair to draw to. Do you really think you had ought to play this? It's a man's game, says Wilma nasty. I expected to see the youngster dog it. Nothing of the kind. That's my bet, he says again, and I noticed something dry in his voice, like the rustle of silk. Single Out just looks black and snarls at the dealer. Turn the cards. Oh, very well, says the Chechacho, talking like a little girl. Somebody snickered and, thinks I there's sprightly doings hereabouts. I'll tarry a while and see 'em singe the fowl. I like the smell of burning pin feathers, it clears my head. Over in the far corner was another animal in knee panties, rigging up one of these flashlight, snap-a-shot, photographed layouts. I found afterwards that he done it for a living, didn't work none, just strayed around as correspondent for an English newspaper syndicate, taking pictures and writing story things. I didn't pay much attention to him hiding under his black cloth, 'cause the faro table was full of bets, and it's hard to follow the play. Well, by and by Wilma shifted another stack belonging to the Easterner. The lad never begged his pardon nor nothing. His fist just shot out and landed on the nigh corner of Wilma's jaw, clean and fair, and Single Out done as pretty a head spin as I ever see considering that it was executed in a cuspidor. 'Twas my first insight into the amenities of football. I'd like to see a whole game of it. They say it lasts an hour and a half. Of all the cordial, why how do you do mule kicks handed down in rhyme and story, that Wallop was the adopted daddy. When he struck, I took the end of the bar like a steeplechaser, for I seen Curly grab at the drawer, and I have aversions to witnessing gun plays from the front end. The tenderfoot rees up in his chair, and snatching a stack of reds in his offemighty, dashed them into Curly's face just as he pulled trigger. It spoiled his aim, and the boy was onto him like a mountain lion, following over the table, along the line of least resistance. It was like tucking a candy sucker from a baby. Curly let go of that six like he was plumb tired of it, and the kid welted him over the ear just onset. Then he turned on the room, and right there my heart went out to him. He took in the line-up at a sweep of his lamps. Any of you gentlemen got ideas on the subject, he says, and his eyes danced like waves in the sunshine. It was all that finished and genteel that I speaks up without thinking, you for me pardner. Just as I said it, there come a swish and flash as if a kag of black powder had changed its state of being. I suppose everybody yelled and dodged except the picture man. He says, "Thank you, gents, very pretty tableau." It was the first flashlight I ever see, and all I recall now is a panorama of staring eyeballs and gaping mouths. When it seen it wasn't torpedoed, the population began crawling out from under chairs and tables. Men hopped out like toads in a rain. I crossed the boy's trail later that evening, found him watching a dance at the Gold Belt. The photographer was there, too, and when he'd got his doghouse fixed, he says, "Everybody take Pardners, and whoop her up. I want this picture for the weekly. Get busy, you, there." We all joined in to help things, the orchestra hit the rough spots, and we went highfalutin down the center, to show the English race how our joy pained us, and that life in the Klondike had the Newport whirl, looking like society in a Siwash village. He got another good picture. Inside of a week, Morrow and I had joined up. We leased a claim and had our cabin done, waiting for snow to fall so's to sled our grub out to the creek. He took to me like I did to him, and he was an educated lad, too. Somehow, though, it hadn't gone to his head, leaving his hands useless like knowledge usually does. One day, just before the last boat pulled downriver, Mr. Struthers, the picture man, come to us Alonzo Struthers, of London and Frisco. He was and showing us a picture, he says. Ain't that great? Sunday supplements. Full page. Big display. Eh? It sure was. 'Bout 9 by 9, and showing every detail of the reception saloon. There was single out analyzing the cuspidor and curly dozen, as contorted and well done as a pretzel. There was the crowd hiding in the corners, and behind the faro table stood the kid, one hand among the scattered chips and cards, the other dominating the layout with curly six. It couldn't have looked more natural if we'd posed for it. It was a bully likeness, I thought, too, till I seen myself glaring over the bar. All that showed of William P. Joyce, Bachelor of some arts and plenty of science, late of Dawson, was the white of his eyes. And talking of whites, I looked like I had washing hung out. Seemed like the draft had raised my hair up, too. Nothing like it ever seen, continues Struthus. I'll call it the winning card, or at bay, or something like that. Feature it as a typical Klondike card game. I'll give you a 2-page write-up. Why, it's the greatest thing I ever did. I'm sorry, says Morrow, thoughtful, but you mustn't run it. What? Says he, and I thinks, oh, Lord. There goes my only show to get perpetuified in ink. I can't let you use it. My wife might see it. Your wife, says I, are you married, partner? Yes, I'm married, and his voice sounded queer. I've got a boy too, see. He took a locket from his flannel shirt and opened it. A curly-headed, dimpled little youngster laughed out at me. Well, I'm D, and then I took off my hat, for in the other side was a woman and, gentlemen, she was a woman. When I seen her it made me feel blushy and ashamed. Gee. She was a stunner. I just stared at her till Struthus looked over my shoulder, and says, excited. Why, it's Olive Troop, the singer. Not anymore, says Morrow, smiling. Oh. So you're the fellow she gave up her art for? I knew her on the stage. Something way deep down in the man grated on me, but the kid was looking at the picture and never noticed, while hunger peered from his face. You can't blame me, he says finally. She'd worry to death if she saw that picture. The likeness is too good. You might substitute another face on my shoulders, that can be done, can't it? Why, sure, dead easy, but I'll not run it at all if you feel that way, says the artist. Then, Morrow resumes, you'll be in Denver this fall, Struthus, eh? Well, I want you to take a letter to her. She'll be glad to see an old friend like you, and to hear from me. Tell her I'm well and happy, and that I'll make a fortune, sure. Tell her, too, that there won't be any mail out of here till spring. Now, I don't claim no second sight in the matter of female features. I ain't had no coachin', not even as much as the ordinary, being raised on a bottle, but I've studied the ornery imprints of men's thoughts, over green tables and gun bar till I can about guess whether they've drawed 4 aces or an invite to a funeral. I got another flash from that man I didn't like, though his words were hearty. He left, soon after, on the last boat. Soon as ever the ground froze we began to sink. In those days steam towers wasn't dreamed of, so we slid wood down from the hills, and burned the ground with fires. It's slow work, and we didn't catch bedrock till December, but when we did we struck it right. 4 feet of 10-cent dirt was what she averaged. Big. Well, I wonder. It near drove Morrow crazy. Billy, old boy, this means I'll see her next summer. Whenever he mentioned her name, he spoke like a man in church or out of breath. Somehow it made me feel like tucking off my cap 40 below at that, and my ears freeze terrible willing since that winter on the Porcupine. That evening, when I wasn't looking, he sneaked the locket out of his shirt and stared at it, famished. Then he kissed it, if you might rehabilitate such a scandalous, hold-fast for-the-corner performance by that name. I must let her know right away, says he. How can I do it? We can hire a messenger, and send him to Dawson, says I. Everybody in camp will pay $5 a letter, and he can bring back the outside mail. They have monthly service from there to the coast. He'll make the trip in 90 days, so you'll get news from home by the 1st of March. Windy Jim will go. He'd leave a good job and a warm camp any time to hit the trail. Just hitch up the dogs, crack a whip, and yell mush on, and he'll get the snowshoe itch, and water at the mouth for hardship. Not being housebroken tame myself, I ain't authority on the joys of getting mail from home, but, next to it, I judge, comes writing to your family. Anyhow, the boy shined up like new money, and there was from 1 to 4 million pages in his hurried note. I don't mean to say that he was grouchy at any time. No, sir. He was the nickel-plated sunbeam of the whole creek. Why, I've knowed him to do the cooking for 2 weeks at a stretch, and never kick and wash the dishes, too, which last, as anybody knows, is crucifyiner than that smell to test of the 3 Jews in the scripture. Underneath all of his sunshine, though, I saw hints of an awful, aching, devilish, starvation. It made me near hate the woman that caused it. He was a wise one, too. I've seen him stirring dog feed with one hand and spouting Gray's elegy with the other. I picked up a heap of knowledge from him, for he had American history pat. One story I liked particular was concerning the origin of placer mining in this country, about a greaser, Jason somebody, who got the gold fever and grub-staked a mob he called the Argonauts Carpenters, I judge, from the mess they made of it. They chartered a schooner and prospected along Azzy Minor, wherever that is. I never seen any boys from there, but the formation was wrong, like Texas, probably, 'cause they sort of drifted into the sheep business. Of course, that was a long ways back, before the '49 rush, but the way he told it was great. Well, 2 weeks after Windy left we worked out of that rich spot and drifted into barren ground. Instead of a fortune, we'd sunk onto the only yellow spot in the whole claim. We cross-cut in 3 places, and never raised a color, but we kept gophering around till March, in hopes. Why did I write that letter? He asked one day. I'd give anything to stop it before it gets out. Think of her disappointment when she hears I'm broke. Nobody can't look into the ground, says I. I don't mind losing out myself, for I've done it for 20 years and I sort of like it now, but I'm sorry for the girl. It means another whole season, he says. I want to see them this summer, or bring them in next fall. Suffer in sluice boxes. Are you plumb daffy? Bring a woman into the Yukon and a little baby. She'd follow me anywhere. She's awful proud as a Kentucky girl can be, and those people would make your Uncle Lucifer look like a cringing cripple, but she'd live in an Indian hut with me. Sure. And following out the simile, nobody but a Siwash would let her. If she don't like some other fella better while you're gone, what are you scared about? He never answered, just looked at me pitifying, as much as to say, well, you poor, drivelin', old polyp. One day Denny, the squaw man, drove up the creek. Windy Jim is back with the mail, says he, and we hit for camp on the run. Only 15 mile, she is, but I was all in when we got there, keeping up with Justus. His eyes outshone the snow glitter and he sang all the time he wasn't roasting me for being so slow, claimed I was active as a toadstool. A man ain't got no license to excite hisself unless his struck pay dirt or got a divorce. "Gi me my mail, quick," he says to Windy, who had tinkered up a one-night stand post office and dealt out letters, at $5 per let. "Nothing doing," says Windy. "Oh, yes there is," he replies, still smiling, "she writes me every week." I got all there was at Dawson, Windy give back, and there ain't a thing for you. I consider the tragedy of this North Country lies in its mail service. Uncle Sam institutes rural deliveries, so the bowlman can register poisoned arrowheads to the Igorots in exchange for recipes to make roulade of naval officer, but his American miners in Alaska go shy on home news for 8 months every year. That was the last mail we had till June. When the river broke, we cleaned up $187 worth of lovely, yellow dust, and $735 in beautiful yellow bills from the post. The first boat down from Dawson brought mail, and I stood beside him when he got his. He shook so he held on to the purser's window. Instead of a stack of squares overrun with female chiropody, there was only one for him, a long, hungry sport, with indications of a law firm in the northwest corner. It charmed him like a rattler. He seemed scared to open it. 2 or 3 times he tried and stopped. They're dead, thinks I, and, sure enough, when he'd looked, I knew it was so, and felt for his hand. Sympathy don't travel by word of mouth between Pardners. It's the grip of the hand or the look of the eye. What cause, says I. He turned, and help me, I never want to see the like again. His face was plum grey and dead, like wet ashes, while his eyes scorched through, all dry and hot. Lines were sinking into it as I looked. It's worse, says he, unless it's a joke. He handed me the dope, in re Olive Troop Morrow versus Justus Morrow, and a letter stating that out of regard for her feelings, and being a gentleman, he wasn't expected to cause a scandal, but to let her get the divorce by default. No explanation, no word from her, nothing. God knows what that boy suffered the next few weeks, but he fought it out alone. She was proud, but he was prouder. Her silence hurt him the worst, of course, but what could he do? Go to her. Fine. Both of us broke and in debt. Also, there's such a thing as dig gin deep enough to scrape the varnish off of a man's self-respect, leaving it raw and shrinking. No. He done like you or me, let her have her way. He took off the locket and hid it, and I never heard her name mentioned for a year. I'd been up creek for a whipsaw one day, and as I came back I heard voices in the cabin. Some musher out from town, thinks I, till something in their tones made me stop in my tracks. I could hear the boy's voice, hoarse and throbbing, as though he dragged words out bleeding, then I heard the other one laugh, a nasty, sneering laugh that ended in a choking rattle, like a noose had tightened on his throat. I jumped for the door, and rounding the corner, something near took me off my feet, something that shot through the air, all pretty and knickerbockery, with a two-faced cap, and nice brown leggings. Also, a little camera was harnessed to it by tugs. It arose, displaying the face of our Alonzo Struthus, black and swollen, with chips sticking in it where he'd hit the woodpile. He glared at Morrow, and his lips foamed like a crab out of water. I hope I'm not intruding, I ventures. When the kid seen me, he says, soft and weak, like something ailed his palate. Don't let me kill him, Billy. Struthus spit, and picked splinters forth from his complexion. I told you for your own good. It's common gossip, says he. Everybody is laughing at you, and then I done a leap for life for the kid, caused the murder light blazed up white in his face, and he moved at the man like he had something serious in view. Run, you idiot! I yells to Struthus as I jammed the youngster back into the cabin. All of a sudden the gas went out of him and he broke, hanging to me like a baby. It can't be, he whispers. It can't be. He throwed himself onto a goods box, and buried his face in his hands. It gripes me to hear a man cry, so I went to the creek for a pail of water. I never heard what Struthus said, but it don't take no Nick Carter to guess. That was the fall of the frying pan strike, do you mind it? Shakespeare George put us on, so me and the kid got in ahead of the stampede. We located 1 and 2 above Discovery, and by Christmas we had a streak uncovered that was all gold. She was coarse, and we averaged 6 ounces a day in pickups. Man, that was ground. I flashed my candle along the drift face, where it looked like gold had been shot in with a scattergun. We was cleaned up and had our pokes at the post when the first boat from Dawson smoked round the bend. Now, in them days, a man's avoirdupois was his abstract of title. There was nothing said about records and patentees as long as you worked your ground, but, likewise, when you didn't work it, somebody else usually did. We had 1,000 feet of as good dirt as ever laid out in the rain, but there was men around drooling to snipe it, and I knowed it was risky to leave. However, I saw what was gnawing at the boy, and if ever a man needed a friend and criminal lawyer, that was the time. According to the Zodiac, certain persons, to the complainant unknown, had a mess of trouble coming up and I wanted to have the bail money handy. We jumped camp together. I made oration to the general gnat-bitten populace, from the gangplank, to the effect that one William P. Joyce, trap, crap, and snap shooter was due to happen back casual most any time, and any lady or gent desirous of witnessing at first hand a Schützenfest with live targets could be gratified by infesting in person or by proxy the lands, tenements, and hereditaments of me and the kid. Well, we hit the Seattle docks at a canter, him headed for the postal telegraph, me for a fruit stand. I bought $1 worth of everything, from crackerjack to cantaloupe, reserving the local option of eating it there in whole or in part, and returning for more. First fresh fruit in 3 years. I reckon my proudest I'll come when I found, beyond peradventure, that I hadn't forgot the Georgie grind. What? Georgie grind consists of feeding rough-hewed slabs of watermelon into your southeast corner, and squirting a stream of seeds out from the other cardinal points, without stopping or strangling. I ate in it, and then wallowed up to the hotel, sweating a different kind of fruit juice from every pore. Not wishing to play any favorites, I'd picked up a basket of tomatoes, a gunnysack of pineapples, and a peck of green plums on the way. Them plums done the business. I'd oughter let bad enough alone. They was non-union, and I begin having trouble with my inside help. Morrow turned in a hurry-up call for the Red Cross, 2 medical colleges, and the Society of Psychologic Research. Between them they diagnosed me as containing everything from housemaid's knee to homesickness of the vital organs, but I know. I swallowed a plum pit, and it sprouted. Next day, when I come out of it, Justus had heard from Denver. His wife had been gone a year, destination unknown. Somebody thought she went to California, so, 2 days later, we registered at the palace, and the Frisco police began dreaming of $5,000 rewards. It was no use, though. One day I met Struthus on Market Street, and he was scared stiff to hear that Morrow was in town. It seems he was night editor of one of the big dailies. "Do you know where the girl is?" says I. "Yes, she's in New York," he answers, looking queer, so I hurried back to the hotel. As I was explaining to Morrow, a woman passed us in the hall with a little boy. In the dimness, the lad mistook Justus. "Oh, Papa, Papa," he yells, and grabs him by the knees, laughing and kicking. My partner sighs, hoarse as a raven, and quicker and light he snatched the little shaver to him, then seeing his mistake, dropped him rough. His face went grey again, and he got wobbly at the hinges, so I helped him into the parlor. He had that hungry, Yukon look, and breathed like he was wounded. "You come with me," says I, "and get your mind off of things. The Eastern Limited don't leave till midnight. Us to the theatre." It was a swell teepee, all right. Variety house, with moving pictures, and actobats, and 2-ton soubrettes, with Barrios diamonds and hand-painted socks. First good show I'd seen in 3 years, and naturally humor broke out all over me. When joy spreads its wings in my vitals, I sound like a boy with a stick running past a picket fence. Not so Morrow. He slopped over the sides of his seat, like he'd been spilled into the house. Right after the sea lions, the orchestra spieled some tea-tree music, and out floats a woman, slim and graceful as an antelope. She had a big pay dump of brown hair, piled up on her hurricane deck, with eyes that snapped and crinkled at the corners. She single-footed in like a derby colt, and the somnambulists in the front row begin to show cause. Something about her startled me, so I nudged the kid, but he was chin-deep in the plush, with his eyes closed. I marked how distraught and haggard he looked, and then, of a sudden he raised half onto his feet. The girl had begun to sing. Her voice was rich and low, and full of deep, still places like a mountain stream. But Morrow? He sunk his fingers into me, and leaned forward, staring as though paradise had opened for him, while the sweat on his face shone like diamond chips. It was the girl of the locket, all right, on the stage again in vaudeville. Her song bubbled along, rippling over sandy, sunlit gravel bars, and sliding out through shadowy trout pools beneath the cool, alder thickets, and all the time my partner sat burning his soul in his eyes, his breath aching out through his throat. Incidental, his digits was knuckle-deep into the muscular tissue of William P., the gent to the right. When she quit, I had to jam him back. For an encore she sang a regular American song, with music to it. When she reached the chorus she stopped. Then away up in the balcony sounded the tiny treble of a boy's soprano, sweet as the ring of silver. The audience turned to a man, and we seen, perched among the newsboys, the littlest, golden-haired youngster, about the size of your thumb, his eyes glued to the face of his mother on the stage below, pouring out his lark song, serious and frightened. Twice he done it, while by Main Street I held his father to the enjoyments of a $2 orchestra chair. "Let us in," we says, 3 minutes later, to the stranger at the stage door, but he looked upon us with unwelcome, like the seven-headed hydrant of Holy Writ. "It's agin the rules," says he. "You can wait in the alley with the other Johnnies." I ain't acclimated to the cold disfavor of a stage door, never having soubretted along the bird and bottle route. I was for the laying on of hands. Moreover, I didn't like the company we was in, Johnnies, by designations of the Irish Terrier at the wicket. They smoked ready-made cigarettes, and some of them must have measured full 8 inches across the chest. Let us stroll gently but firmly into, over, and past the remains of this party, to the missus, says I, but Morrow got seized with the shakes, of a sudden. "No, no. We'll wait here." At last she come out, step-pin high. When she moved she rustled and rattled like she wore sandpaper at the ankles. Say, she was royal. She carried the youngster in her arms, sound asleep, and it wasn't till she stepped under the gaslight that she seen us. "Oh," she cried, and went white as the lace of her cloak. Then she hugged the kiddie close to her, standing straight and queenly, her eyes ablaze, her lips moist, and red, and scornful. God, she was grand, but him. He looked like a barnacle. "Olive," says he, bullfroggy, and that's all. Just quit like a dog and ate her up by long-distance eyesight. Lord! Nobody would have known him for the same man that called the crookedest gamblers on the Yukon, and bolted newspaper men raw. He had ingrowing language. It oozed out through his pores till he dreamed like a harvest hand. I'd have had her in my arms in 2 winks, so that all hell and a policeman couldn't have busted my holt till she'd said she loved me. She shriveled him with a look, the likes of which ain't strayed over the Mason-Dixon line since Lee surrendered, and swept by us, inviting and hospitable as an iceberg in a cross sea. Her cab door slammed, and I yanked Morrow out of there, more dead than alive. "Let me go home," says he wearily. You bet. I snorts. It's time you was tucked in. The dew is falling and some rude person might accost you. You big slob. There's a man's work to do tonight, and as I don't seem to have no competition in holding the title, I suppose it's my lead. I throwed him into a carriage. You'd best put on your nightie, and have the maid turn down your light. Sweet dreams, Gussie. I was plumb sore on him. History don't record no divorce suits in the Stone Age, when a domestic-inclined man or loose toted a white oak billy, studded with wire nails, according to the pictures, and didn't scruple to use it, both at home and abroad. Women was hairy, them days, and harder to make love, honor, and obey, but principles isn't yin. I boarded another cab. Drive me to number, giving him the address I'd heard her use. Who is it? Came her voice when I rang the bell. Messenger boy, I replies, perjuring my vocal cords. When she opened the door, I pushed through and closed it behind me. What does this mean? She cried. Help! Shut up! It means you're killing the best boy in the world, and I want to know why. Who are you? I'm Bill Joyce, your husband's partner. Old Tarantula Bill, that don't fear no man, woman, or child that roams the forest. I'm here to find what ails you. Leave this house, sir. Well, not to any extent. You're a good girl, I knowed it when I first seen your picture. Now, I want you to tell me. Insolent. Shall I call the police? Her voice was icy, and she stood as solid as stone. Madam, I'm as gentle as a jellyfish, and peaceful to a fault, but if you raise a row before I finish my talk I'll claim no responsibility over what occurs to the first 8 or 10 people that intrudes, and I drop my skinning knife, laying it on the planner. Philanthropy is raging through my innards, and 2 loving hearts need joining. I don't love him, she quotes, like a phonograph, ignoring my cutlery. I'll take exception to that ruling, and I picks up a picture of Justus she'd dropped as I broke in. She never batted an eye. I nursed that lad through brain fever, when all he could utter was your name. Has he been sick? The first sign of spring lit up her peaks. Most dead. Notice of the divorce done it. He's in bad shape yet. Morrow never had a sick day in his life, but I stomped both feet on the soft pedal, and pulled out the tremolo stop. Oh. Oh. Her voice was soft, though she still stood like a birch. Little girl, I laid a hand on her shoulder. We both love that boy. Come, now, what is the matter? She flashed up like powder. Matter. I thought he was a gentleman, even though he didn't love me, that he had a shred of honor, at least. But no. He went to Alaska and made a fortune. Then he squandered it, drinking, fighting, gambling, and frittering it away on women. Bah! Lewd creatures of the dance halls, too. Hold up. Your dope sheet is way to the bad. There's something wrong with your libretto. Who told you all that? Never mind. I have proof. Look at these, and you dare to ask me why I left him. She dragged out some pictures and throwed them at me. Ah. Why didn't I let the kid kill him, says I, through my teeth. The first was the gambling room of the reception. There stood Morrow with the men underfoot, there was the bottles and glasses, the chips and cards, and also the distressful spectacle of Tarantula Bill Joyce, a number 12 man, all gleaming teeth, and rolling eyeballs, inserting hisself into a number 9 opening, and doing surprising well at it. Look at them. Look at them well, she jibed. The second was the Gold Belt dance hall, with the kid cavorting through a drunken orgy of painted ladies, like a ball in a pansy patch. But the other, it took my breath away till I felt I was on smooth ice, with cracks showing. It was the inside of a cabin, after a big potlatch, displaying a table littered up with fizz bottles and dishes galore. Diamond Tooth Loose stood on a chair, waving kisses and spilling booze from a mug. In the center stood Morrow with another girl, nestling agin his bosom most horrible loving. Gee! It was a home splitter, and it left me sparring for wind. The whole thing exhaled an air of debauchery that would make a wooden Indian blush. No one thing in particular, just the general local color of $1,000 bender. Charming, isn't it? She sneered. I don't savvy the bureau. There's something phony about it. I can explain the other two, but this one. Then it come to me in a flash. The man's face was perfect, but he wore knickerbockers. Now, to my personal knowledge, the only being that ever invaded Rampart City in them things was Alonzo Struthers. There's secrets of the darkroom that I ain't wise to, says I, but I feel that this is going to be a bad night for the newspaper enterprise of Frisco if it don't explain. I'll fetch the man that busted your Larrys and Peanuts. I'll what? Says she. Larrys and Peanuts, that's Roman. The kid told me all about 'em. They're sort of little cheap gods. Will you ever go? She snapped. I don't need your help. Tell him I hate him. She stamped her foot, and the iron come into her again till the pride of all Kentucky blazed in her eyes. She couldn't understand my explanations no more than I could, so I ducked. As I backed out the door, though, I seen her crumple up and settle all of a heap on the floor. She certainly did hate that man scandalous. I'm glad some editors work nights. Struthers wasn't overjoyed at my call, particular, as I strayed in with two janitors dangling from me. They said he was busy and couldn't be interrupted, and they seemed to insist on it. It's a bully night, says I, by way of epigram, unhooking the pair of bouncers. You wouldn't like me to take you riding perhaps? Are you drunk, or crazy, says he. What do you mean by breaking into my office? I can't talk to you, we're just going to press. I'd like to stay and watch it, says I, but I've got a news item for you. At the same time I draws my Skinner and lays it on the back of his neck, tempting. Still, in the lamplight, is discouraging to some temperaments. One of the bodyguards was took with urgent business, and left a streamer of funny noises behind him, while the other gave autumn leaf imitations in the corner. Struthers looked like a dose of seasickness on a sour stomach. Get your hat. Quick. I jogged him, gentle and encouraging. Age or lose commands respect. Therefore the sight of a 6-foot, grizzled Klondiker in a wide hat, benevolently prodding the night editor in the short ribs and applesauce, with 8 bright and chilly inches, engendered a certain respect in the repertorial staff. You're going to tell Mrs. Morrow all about the pretty pictures, I says, like a father. Let me go, damn you, he frothed, but I wedged him into a corner of the cab and took off his collar in strips. It interfered with his breathing, as I couldn't get a halt low enough to regulate his respiration. He kicked out 2 cab windows, but I bumped his head agin the woodwork, by way of repartee. It was a real pleasure, not to say recreation, experimenting with the noises he made. Seldom I get a neck I give a cuss to squeeze. His was number 15 at first, by the feel, but I reduced it a quarter size at a time. When we got there I helped him out, one hand under his chin, the other back of his ears. I done it as much from regard of the neighbors as animosities to him, for it was the still, medium small hours. I tiptoed in with my treatise on the infamies of photography gurgling under my hand, but at the door I stopped. It was ajar, and there, under the light, I spied Morrow. In his arms I got glimpses of black lace and wavy, brown hair, and a white cheek that he was accomplishing wonders with. They wouldn't have heard a manhole explosion. He's still fitting to be my partner, I thinks, and then I heard Struthers's teeth chatter and grind. I looked at him, and the secret of the whole play came to me. Never having known the divine passion, it ain't for me to judge, but I tightened on his voice box and whispered. You've outlived your period of usefulness, Struthus, and it's time to go. Let us part friends, however. So I bade him Godspeed from the top step. Looking back on the evening now, that adieu was my only mistake. I limped for a week. He had a bottle in his hip pocket,